Hello again, this is Matt with Endor Labs, and in these series of videos, we're talking about Endor Labs' policies, and that it can help really conform to your workflow and really kind of let you focus on what you really need to fix and what you need to focus on, all while being developer friendly as well. And in the previous video, we talked about finding policies that do what they say. They find things, especially the things that you need, right? Now, what I want to talk about are the action policies. So it's like, okay, Endor, you found me this. Now I want you to do something with it. Okay. And first, I want to talk about this whole notion of quote unquote breaking the build, right? And everybody says, oh, if you find a critical or high that's fixable, break the build, break the build. And if there's anything I've learned in my years of doing this, is that there's a few things that are certain in life, and it's death, taxes, and you're always going to have vulnerabilities in your code, especially open source components. So this notion of like, oh, just break the build sounds great on paper, but in practice, you really want to be surgical about it because every single one of your builds, they're going to have vulnerabilities in it, right? And if you're breaking every single build, what's going to happen? It's the same problem that we faced throughout the years of I'm a developer, you keep breaking my builds, I'm going to find a way around it and push the prod anyway. We don't want that. Like the reaction to a broken build should not be let me find a way around it because I get so annoyed with these. The reaction should really be, uh-oh, my builds don't usually break because of a security issue. This must actually be serious. I should go talk to somebody about it. So kind of let's see how this plays out in practice, right? I have a bunch here created, but let's actually look at how to set this up and kind of how we can tweak this so that I don't break every build. I only break those, uh-oh ones. So a lot of things you can do here, right? Vulnerability ID, you want a specific one or any vulnerability ID that meets these criteria. We're going to leave that blank for now. Severity, critical and high. This is the most common way to set this up, right? Can I even fix it? Yes, only show me the ones that have a fix available. Only show the developers the one that have a fix available. Relationship, you can do direct or transitive. Sometimes people start with direct dependencies because those are just easier to fix, right? I'm going to leave that to any for now. Is the dependency reachable? Is the function reachable? Now I want to also incorporate EPSS. So anything over 1%, right? Maybe you want to do a specific ecosystem here. Maybe there are certain pipelines that you only want to test, NPM and Maven, right? I'm going to leave that for any for now. I want to exclude test dependencies. I also want to exclude approximate dependencies. A lot of tools, this is a whole nother topic for another time, but the brief is a lot of tools, what they'll do is they'll just infer the dependency tree, meaning guess. This can result in false positives. We allow you the ability to say, okay, if you can't get the full build in the pipeline or on a PR or something like that, we'll give you the approximate dependencies and infer what dependencies are there along with their versions number. You have the choice to say, I want to exclude those approximate dependencies. Again, I want to focus on the uh-oh ones I know are real, I know are legit, I know pose a significant and serious threat right now. Those are the ones I want to bring people's attention to. I can exclude a dependency name. Maybe there are certain dependencies don't would not apply for this policy. I want to exclude certain package names. I want to exclude findings for transitive dependencies via other projects that may come in. I want to include GitHub action findings. I'm going to leave that as no. This is the CI/CD security we provide as well. I don't want to include container findings. Maybe I do in some cases, maybe I don't, right? I want to also only pick a certain branch type. Maybe it's a reference, maybe it's a pull request, maybe it's a default. I'm going to leave it as any. But you kind of see the point here, right? There's so much configurability here for you to say, okay, I know my environment's different from everybody else's, but this is how my environment works. I want to make Endor only trigger certain findings and certain actions under my specific requirements. So that way they fit with what I use and how I work, right? How my company works. So I've set all that up. So now instead of breaking the build on anything with just critical and high and maybe a fix available, right? We've now set it so that only break the build when a vulnerability or finding is found that is critical and high or high that has a fix available for to it, whether or not it's direct or transitive dependency, whether or not or a reachable dependency, and only when it's a reachable function, and only when the EPSS is above 1% in any ecosystem, and only if it is not a test dependency, and only if it is not an approximate inferred dependency version. I also want you to include transitive dependencies or exclude transitive dependencies from other projects. I also want you to exclude GitHub action findings. I also want you to exclude container findings and whether it's on any branch. When you do all this, you're going to drastically see your number of broken builds just go down, way, way, way down. So instead of breaking 100 builds, you're breaking 3 because they're only going to be broken on these specific parameters. Anything else, you can warn, right? You can send a warning, let the build continue, let the development team keep working, but you're giving people a heads up, like, hey, you have this here. Maybe, you say potentially reachable function, but a reachable dependency. Maybe you include mediums, right? You get the idea here. You can really kind of configure it to, instead of breaking everything, just warn instead. Let the team continue to work. That's one option. The other option is to send a notification. There's a couple different ways to do this. Very common one is with Jira, right? Send it to Jira, send the ticket to Jira. You can send an email, or when you set up with our, GitHub app, GitLab app, whatever have you, we can actually comment on the pull request that violates this policy. And I'll show what that looks like in a second here. But now I've set up a notification. I can exclude or exclude certain projects. This is another big thing. There's a lot of projects out there where in certain companies, some Java project that's sitting in a server in a closet that never sees the light of day. I don't want to include that in here, right? That's not a path an adversary can take to, exploit a vulnerability. Other projects like front-end web applications that use JavaScript and that are very susceptible to cross-site scripting, right? I definitely want to include something like this. So again, we're giving you the flexibility to say which projects do I want to actually include that apply to this policy. And then, of course, you can name it, give it a description, give it a tag, whatever have you, right? So I'll show you one that I've set up here, right? Can edit this policy. And now I have P0 as a tag. I have it set up to break the build. I'll show what that looks like within GitHub. And then I also have something where we go ahead and we actually send something over to Jira, right? So what does this actually look like when it's actually triggered? And remember, an action policy gets triggered when a finding is found. So it goes finding, then action. So within Jira, I get all the information I need here. What the finding is, the project, the explanation, and of course, the remediation of how to actually fix it. And what's nice about this is when you do fix this, I'm going to add a little comment here automatically to say, hey, this vulnerability was resolved via Endor Labs. Here's where the link to the solved project or the solved vulnerability is, right? Now, that's one way to be a little bit more developer friendly, but in my opinion, I really like the commenting on a pull request. Why do I actually like this? Why is this important? So you can see in this pull request, I added a dependency or a few dependencies actually that went ahead and introduced a bunch of vulnerabilities. Now, in this pull request, because we have it set up with GitHub, we actually run a check that will identify these vulnerabilities and say which ones are the blocking issues. To say, hey, you've introduced these vulnerabilities that meet these very, very, very specific criteria, and we can actually see the files that were changed there, and we could see that we've commented on the pull request that violated these policies. So as a developer, I don't have to go anywhere. I can stay in GitHub. I can stay in the context of my pull request that introduced these issues that we've commented on. And I didn't have to set anything up. I set up the GitHub app and it did this for me automatically. So once you get this set up, then you're kind of done. Like your criteria are set. we're only going to block the builds on very, very specific parameters that you set for yourself. And then you're able to actually block the things that matter most. And you can actually focus on and fix what matter most, get alerted on those, and prevent those from getting thrown out into production. Meanwhile, allowing your developers to work when they do come across vulnerabilities that aren't as risky as this or don't pose a risk such as this. So this is really about prioritizing these vulnerabilities in this project. And you can kind of see with this project here, if I go back into Acme monorepo and pull this up, like there's a lot more findings here. And specifically, even when I take a look at Python, the PyPy ecosystem, in total, there's 68 findings, but I'm only focusing on the ones that matter most. And I'm only going to fail a build if those pose a significant risk. And then those findings will actually show up as a pull request tied within the project as well here. So that was action policies. We've talked about finding policies that trigger action policies. In the next video, we're going to talk about exception policies, because a lot of times, especially with static analysis, vulnerabilities have an exception. There's some context to it that may not apply to us. So we'll talk about that in the next video. Thanks very much.